Take a deep breath. Feel the cool air flow in and let it out slowly. The weight of the day leaves your shoulders. Your thoughts drift like clouds above a quiet ocean. Just listen to the rhythm of your breath, calm, steady, endless, like waves reaching the shore and returning home. Now the story begins. Our story tonight begins on a shoreline that no longer appears on maps. The kind of coast forgotten by satellites and travelers alike, where sea foam glows faintly in the dark and the air hums with something alive. A sound not entirely of wind or water. It was here, long ago before the moon landing, before Mars rovers, that NASA's gaze was not turned upward, but downward. Few remember this chapter of history, and fewer still dare to speak of it, because what they found below the surface of the sea was never meant to be shared. Back then, the agency had a division known as Project Nereus, named after the Greek god of the deep. Officially, it was a study of subaqueous communication systems, how radio frequencies traveled underwater, how signals bent and fractured in pressure and silence. Unofficially, it was something else. Declassified fragments later revealed that in 1958, just a year after the agency was founded, NASA received strange readings from hydrophones stationed in the Pacific. They weren't simple whale songs or tectonic rumblings. They were structured, patterned, repeating sequences of tones, rising and falling in ways that mirrored the magnetic fields of the Earth itself. At first, scientists thought it was an equipment fault, feedback, interference, maybe even the early Cold War sonar experiments. But then the signals began to respond. When technicians adjusted the frequency, the ocean answered back, not with echoes, but with changes. The tones evolved, shifting slightly out of sync as though correcting themselves. It was like listening to a voice learning how to speak your language in real time. For 3 months, NASA kept the discovery sealed within internal memos. Their reports used clinical language, acoustic anomalies, synchronous feedback loops. But beneath the scientific jargon, a pattern was forming, a realization too vast to comprehend. The sea was alive in a way no one had ever imagined. By the spring of 1959, a small team was dispatched to study the source. They chose a remote area of the Pacific, where the water dropped into an abyss more than 10 kilometers deep. A place so quiet, the sound of the Earth's own rotation could almost be felt. Their vessel, the Argo 9, carried experimental submersibles designed not to explore visually, but to listen. They wanted to record what the ocean said when no one else was listening. The first descent began on a moonless night. The sub lowered into blackness, past the dancing ribbons of plankton, past the glimmering threads of jellyfish that looked like galaxies caught in motion. The deeper they went, the quieter everything became, until the only sound left was the low hum of the vessel and the faint beating of their own hearts. At 6,000 meters, they stopped. Hydrophones extended like delicate antennae, listening. Minutes passed. Then a sound emerged, a deep resonant tone that vibrated through the hull, not like music but like memory. It wasn't random. It carried intent. The operator noted that the sound pulses came in symmetrical intervals, a binary pattern like a code, or perhaps a question. They transmitted a response, a single controlled signal tone. The ocean replied. One of the crew members later wrote in his personal log, "It felt as though something vast had turned its attention toward us. Not with hostility, but recognition." For hours, the sub drifted in quiet conversation with the deep, and when they surfaced, their instruments had recorded over 6 terabytes of data. In 1959 terms, an impossible amount. But the data wasn't just audio. Hidden within the waveform, scientists later found mathematical sequences that described, somehow, stellar formations, constellations, the exact same patterns found in NASA's celestial charts. The revelation was staggering. The ocean had somehow spoken in the language of the stars. Back at headquarters, the recordings caused chaos. Mathematicians tried to decode them, linguists tried to translate the tone intervals, and physicists argued whether the data could even exist. But amid the confusion, one quiet observation emerged. The deeper the signal went, the more it resembled cosmic radiation. It was as if the very depths of the sea were humming the same frequency as outer space. Weeks later, Project Nereus was shut down. Officially, the explanation was data inconsistency. Unofficially, something else had happened. The recordings and every trace of the mission were transferred to a sealed research unit known as Division Blue. Its members took oaths of silence, and within a year, NASA's focus shifted completely, from the abyss below to the void above. They stopped listening to the ocean, but the ocean did not stop speaking. Even now, when deep-sea microphones pick up unexplainable sounds, the bloop, the Julia, the upsweep, they carry the same rhythmic fingerprint, the same cosmic whisper. And if you listen closely in the stillness between waves, you might hear it too, that low, endless tone, the one that started it all. The ocean has always been a mirror, but maybe, just maybe, it's also a voice. In the years that followed Project Nereus's quiet burial, the ocean returned to being what it had always been, a blue mystery best admired from afar. But inside NASA's most restricted archives, a handful of scientists refused to let it go. They called themselves Division Blue, a small nameless department that operated in silence, tucked away beneath administrative jargon and false research grants. Officially, their work was marine frequency calibration. Unofficially, they were trying to answer one forbidden question: who or what answered back? Division Blue was led by Dr. Elias Warren, a physicist who had spent his early career studying cosmic background radiation. He'd always believed the universe had a rhythm, a vibration that linked everything that ever existed. When he first saw the Nereus recordings, his first words were, "This isn't noise. This is resonance." Warren gathered a quiet team, 5 members, all specialists, all volunteers. They moved their operations to a decommissioned naval facility off the California coast. The base had no name. It didn't need one. Inside its cold, salt-stained walls, they built something new, a vessel designed to descend deeper than any before it, one that didn't rely on light or cameras. Instead, it used resonant mapping, a system that could see with vibration and frequency, translating sound into geometry. They called it the Sentinel. It was more than a submersible. It was an ear to the unknown. The mission was scheduled for late autumn 1962. A single pilot was chosen, Captain Jonas Hale, a Navy diver known for his calm under pressure. He had seen the darkness of the Mariana Trench, the stillness that makes even hardened men whisper prayers. When he was briefed on the purpose of the dive, he didn't flinch. He only asked one question: "If it speaks again, what do I say?" Dr. Warren looked at him and said softly, "You listen. That's all humanity needs to do right now. Listen." The Sentinel launched at midnight. Its descent was slow, deliberate. Pressure gauges trembled as the sea swallowed it whole. Above, the waves stilled, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. At 3,000 meters, Hale activated the resonance scanner. The system hummed alive, casting invisible sound waves in all directions. The screen before him lit up with flowing geometric shapes. Waves turned into architecture, echoes forming corridors of sound. And then, there it was again, the tone, low, immense, ancient. It came not from a single direction, but everywhere. Like the ocean's bones were vibrating with intent. The resonance drew patterns on the display, spirals within spirals, each one more complex than the last. The system struggled to render them all, then suddenly one of the shapes froze, as if something had recognized that it was being observed. The pattern began to shift, transforming from spirals into symmetry. And in its center, a form emerged. Not a creature, but a structure. It resembled a cathedral. No, something older. Its proportions were precise, impossible, as if carved by mathematics itself. And through the static hum of the deep, a sound broke through. 3 notes, soft, melancholic, repeated twice. Jonas Hale's heartbeat echoed through his headset. He whispered, barely audible, "It's calling me." The sonar analyst at the surface station responded, "Captain, confirm it calling you." But before Hale could answer, the transmission glitched. The tones rose in intensity, not aggressive but urgent. The geometry on his screen began to pulse in sync with his own vitals. His heart rate increased. The machine matched it, until suddenly, as everything went silent, the Sentinel stopped descending. The sensors flatlined. Surface control waited 12 minutes. Then, out of nowhere, the system came alive again. But Hale's voice was gone. Only the tone remained. This time it wasn't just 3 notes. It was a full sequence, a melody. and embedded within it was a frequency no one could identify, one that caused their recording instruments to heat up, their magnetic tape to distort. When the Sentinel finally surfaced hours later, it was empty. No pilot, no trace. Just seawater pooling in the cockpit and a faint hum still coming from the speakers, the same tone that had answered Nereus years before. Division Blue was dissolved the next day. The file sealed. The existence of the Sentinel erased from record. Dr. Warren disappeared 6 months later. Rumors said he had been transferred to a lunar telemetry program. Others whispered that he had gone back to the sea, and as for Captain Hale, his name was never spoken again. But deep-sea monitoring stations across the Pacific began to report something strange. Whenever storms grew strong, whenever waves reached unnatural heights, a single tone would emerge beneath the chaos. 3 notes, soft, melancholic, like a man humming from the bottom of the world. Since then, NASA has never officially returned to deep-sea exploration. Publicly, they say it's due to funding, focus, and risk. But the ones who knew Warren's work, the few who glimpsed the encrypted recordings, say otherwise. They say the last signal decoded from the Sentinel contained a series of coordinates, not to a point on Earth, but to a region of space where the same frequency patterns had been detected in cosmic background radiation. It was as if the ocean was pointing upward, as if something beneath the waves was connected to what lies beyond the stars. Maybe that's why NASA changed direction. Maybe that's why humanity was told to look up, because the truth below was too close for comfort. And in a strange way, that's where our story circles back. The ocean and the cosmos, 2 mirrors of the same origin. Both humming the same ancient song. The only question left is, who sang first? It's been 60 years since the Sentinel sank into silence. Decades have washed over the memory, burying it beneath politics, budgets, and new missions. The world has turned its eyes upward, toward the red dust of Mars, toward the glow of distant galaxies. The sea was left to itself and quiet, infinite. Patient, but the sea never forgets. In 2023, aboard a research vessel named the Calyptra, Dr. Naomi Wexler, an oceanographer from the University of Edinburgh, was running a deep acoustic survey. Along the Pacific Ridge, the mission was routine, mapping tectonic echo patterns for climate models. It was midnight when her instruments caught something strange. A sound, barely detectable, a harmonic whisper buried in miles of silence. It wasn't a whale call nor geological resonance. It was too structured, too perfect. 3 notes, soft, melancholic, the same pattern Hale heard. Naomi froze as she stared at the monitor. Her assistant, Karim, adjusted the filters, isolating the frequency from the surrounding noise. What appeared on the spectral graph was impossible. The waveform was symmetrical, as if drawn by hand, a pure trinary rhythm repeating at exact 42-second intervals. Karim frowned. That's not natural. No echo behaves like that, Naomi whispered. Run a harmonic analysis. Cross-reference cosmic datasets. He blinked. Cosmic datasets? From NASA? Yes, just humor me. The processing took 10 minutes. When the system finished, a single line appeared on the screen. Match found. Cosmic microwave background, NASA Archive ID 1962 NRSE 17. Naomi's blood ran cold. 1962, Nereus, the same project that vanished from the record. That night, she sat alone in her cabin, listening to the signal on loop through her headphones. It didn't sound mechanical. It sounded alive, like something vast and ancient trying to hum itself back into memory. As she listened deeper, something subtle began to happen. The hum started syncing with her breathing. Inhale, exhale, hum. Her heartbeat slowed. Her thoughts drifted into stillness. Then, faintly beneath the 3 main notes, she heard a 4th. Soft, almost imperceptible, like an afterthought of the sea. When she woke hours later, she had no memory of falling asleep. Only one image lingered in her mind, a cathedral of light beneath endless water. 2 days later, Naomi tried to submit her findings to the Pacific Acoustic Data Network. But before her report could upload, the system logged her out. Her credentials were revoked. The network access she'd held for 10 years was suddenly restricted. An email arrived within the hour. Dr. Wexler, you are to cease all activity related to your recent acoustic discovery. A representative from the United States Office of Oceanic Research will contact you for debriefing. Do not disclose data or recordings publicly. Director NOAA, Classified Oversight Unit. She read the message twice. There was no such department listed in NOAA, and that's when she realized Division Blue had returned. 3 nights later, under a sky thick with storm clouds, a black helicopter landed on the deck of the Calyptra. 2 men stepped out, faces hidden by rain and low light. They asked for her recorder, her samples, her laptop. Dr. Wexler, one of them said calmly, what you heard isn't for the world yet. You're lucky we found you before it finds you. She tried to speak, but they only handed her an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Project Blue Echo, Reactivation Order 2023, and at the bottom, a signature she didn't expect to see, Dr. Elias Warren, the man who vanished in 1963. Back at her hotel that night, Naomi played the sound again on her private drive. She slowed it down, magnified its lower frequencies, and watched as the audio translated into visual waves on her screen. The patterns shifted, spirals, then lattice shapes, then a sudden burst of symmetry. For a brief second, the waveform formed a perfect circle, and in the center letters began to appear, not English, not human language at all. Yet as she stared, her brain began to understand it wasn't a word. It was an invitation. Something beneath the waves was calling again. The next morning, she booked a private vessel and traced the coordinates embedded in the signal. They pointed to a trench northeast of the Mariana region, a section marked unreachable in all modern maps. The ocean was restless that day, as if aware of her approach. The water churned without wind. Instruments flickered. Time itself seemed to bend. Her GPS jumped miles in seconds. At 03:42 a.m., she dropped a submersible drone. Its cameras flickered through endless darkness. Pressure gauges screamed. The ocean around it pulsed with invisible force. Then suddenly, the hum, 3 notes, then 4. Her screens turned white for 3 full seconds. When the feed returned, she saw movement. Not a creature, not light. Something bigger, a shape too vast to comprehend. It wasn't floating. It wasn't anchored. It was breathing, and for one brief moment, a shadow crossed the drone's view, like a mountain turning in its sleep. Hours later, all her instruments failed. Her ship's power died. The sea went perfectly still. In that silence, she heard it again, the voice whispering from the depths, soft, patient, endless. You came back. Naomi didn't remember leaving the deck. She only remembered the sensation of falling, not downward but inward, into something ancient and familiar. When she woke the next morning, she was adrift, her equipment gone, her coordinates erased, but on her wrist a faint blue mark shimmered under sunlight, a pattern of 3 rings connected by sound waves, the same design found in the archives of Project Nereus, and somewhere far below, in the cold cathedral of the deep, a new pulse began to rise, as if the ocean itself had remembered her name. The waves rolled like slow thunder the next morning, a grey calm settling over the Pacific. Naomi stood at the stern of a recovery ship that had coincidentally found her drifting. The crew didn't ask questions. They didn't speak much at all. Only one man seemed to be in charge. Mid-50s, salt grey hair, wearing a dark blue windbreaker, with no emblem except a small silver symbol stitched near the collar. 3 concentric circles. He approached her slowly, hands clasped behind his back. Dr. Wexler, he said, his voice smooth as the sea before a storm. You've heard the song, haven't you? Naomi's heart quickened. Who are you? The man gave a faint smile. Division Blue. We've been expecting you. They took her to a research facility buried into the cliffs of Guam's western ridge, a complex half forgotten by modern maps. Its corridors hummed with low-frequency vibrations, the kind that travel through bone rather than air. Everything smelled faintly of salt and steel. Inside the central chamber, Naomi saw rows of consoles, holographic projectors, and large cylindrical tanks filled with seawater, each one holding what looked like strands of light, suspended and pulsing like living threads. What are those? She asked. A voice behind her answered, deep, weary, and familiar. Echo filaments. She turned, and standing before her, much older, eyes pale with fatigue, was Dr. Elias Warren. Naomi froze. "You're alive." He nodded slowly. "Alive, yes. Human, perhaps not entirely anymore." She looked at him closely. His skin carried faint blue veins that seemed to glow under the low light, and his irises flickered with a subtle luminescence. Warren gestured toward the tanks. "These are the remains of the cathedral. The structure Hale saw before contact was lost. We've learned that it's not a ruin, nor a city, nor even architecture. It's alive." Naomi frowned. "Alive as in biological? Not by our definition. It's a hybrid. Matter that thinks, geometry that breathes. We call it a resonant organism, a consciousness that exists through vibration itself." He paused, pressing a trembling hand against the glass of a tank. The filaments inside responded, glowing brighter, rearranging themselves into spirals. "It listens," Warren whispered. Even now, Naomi stared, mesmerized. Why would NASA abandon this? This should have changed everything. Warren turned to her, eyes heavy with secrets too long carried. "Because the first time we tried to communicate with it, it responded in a way we couldn't handle. The frequency it returned began affecting every living cell around it. Plants wilted, people collapsed, instruments melted. Yet inside the chaos, our monitors recorded patterns, not random but structured, recursive. It was trying to translate itself into us." Naomi shivered. "Translate itself?" "It wanted to share something," he said softly. "Knowledge perhaps, or memory. But whatever it was, it began rewriting us subtly at the molecular level. That's why we stopped. That's why NASA turned away from the sea and looked to the stars instead, because they realized it wasn't alien down there. It was connected." He moved toward a control console and dimmed the lights. The entire chamber filled with a faint hum, the same tone Naomi had recorded. "We've traced its resonance patterns," he continued. "They correspond exactly with cosmic microwave signals, echoes from the birth of the universe. The same frequencies appear in star radiation and deep-sea harmonics. The sea and the cosmos are reflections of one another." Naomi felt her breath catch. "You mean the ocean is part of the same system as space?" "Exactly. Two mirrors of a single origin. The universe breathes in waves, and the ocean still remembers how." He handed her a small recorder. "Listen carefully." When Naomi pressed play, she heard the 3 familiar notes, then faintly a voice beneath them. Not human, not machine, but something vast and mournful. It wasn't speaking words. It was speaking images, memories of movement, of creation, as if the water itself was dreaming. Warren spoke softly. "We've decoded fragments. It's a history us older than the planet. The sea remembers the birth of stars, the death of worlds, and the first sound that ever echoed across existence." Naomi's hands trembled. "What does it want from us?" He smiled faintly. "That's what you're here to find out. You heard the 4th note, didn't you?" Her eyes widened. "How do you know?" "Because you've already been marked by it." He pointed to her wrist, the faint blue symbol she had woken up with after her dive. "It's not ink," he said. "It's a frequency scar. The ocean recognized you. You're part of its song now." The lights flickered. A low tremor passed through the facility, barely perceptible, but enough to make the water in the tanks ripple. An alarm flashed on the main console. Seismic event detected, 11 north, 142 east. Mariana Ridge and Warren looked at the coordinates, then back at her. "It's waking." Outside in the deep trench where the Sentinel was lost, something enormous began to move. A pressure wave spread through the water, vibrating in perfect rhythm with Naomi's pulse. In the command center, her wrist mark glowed. She could feel the hum in her veins, like a heartbeat answering another heartbeat. "Dr. Warren," she whispered, "what happens if it finishes the song?" He turned toward the tank, watching as the filaments of light began to swirl faster, forming a single phrase in shifting geometry. "Return to source." Warren's voice trembled. "Then the sea and the sky will finally remember they were never separate." The hum did not stop that night. It lingered through the metal corridors of the Division Blue facility, like the ocean itself had found a way to breathe through walls. Every vent whispered. Every light flickered to the same unseen rhythm. Naomi couldn't sleep. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the structure, vast and cathedral-like, suspended in darkness, a geometry too perfect for chaos, too alive for stone. At dawn, Warren called her to the observation deck. The sea stretched endlessly before them, still silver and unbroken. Yet somewhere beneath that calm surface, an intelligence was stirring. "We've received its reply," he said quietly. "It's giving us coordinates," Naomi frowned. "Coordinates to what?" "To itself," Warren whispered. "It wants us to come." By nightfall, preparations were complete. They called the operation Echo Fall. A team of 4, Warren, Naomi, and 2 specialists in resonance mapping. Their vessel was the Aeon, a direct descendant of the Sentinel, its hull layered with acoustic shielding, its interior pulsing with soft cyan lights that breathed like a heartbeat. Before they boarded, Warren handed Naomi a small pendant, a thin, glass disc etched with the same 3-ring symbol as her wrist. "It's a stabilizer," he said. "The frequency might disorient you. Keep this near your pulse. It'll remind your body what rhythm belongs to you." "And if I lose that rhythm?" she asked. Warren's eyes dimmed. "Then you'll start hearing the ocean from the inside." The descent began at midnight. The Aeon slipped beneath the surface like a whispered thought. Above, moonlight fractured on the waves, then vanished entirely. Pressure deepened. The world grew dark. Sound itself became liquid. At 4,000 meters, the radio chatter from the surface grew faint, then faded completely. Only the hum remained, a constant low vibration threading through the walls. Naomi's body felt weightless, her thoughts slowing to match the rhythm of the deep. The pendant on her chest pulsed faintly, its light flickering in time with her heartbeat. Through the viewport, the darkness began to shimmer. Not with light but with movement. Tiny motes drifting through the void, like dust in a beam of sunlight that had somehow found its way underwater. Each mote glowed faintly, a pale blue, a pulse of life without a body. "Echospores," Warren murmured. "Fragments of the cathedral's surface. They exist halfway between matter and frequency." Naomi reached out, her fingers brushing the glass. The motes responded, moving closer, swirling in gentle spirals around the submersible's hull. "It's aware of us," she whispered. Warren nodded slowly. "It's listening." At 6,000 meters, the darkness changed. It was no longer empty. Shapes began to emerge, massive, smooth structures rising from the abyss, arches and towers made of translucent stone that seemed to breathe with light. Naomi's breath caught. "My God!" The entire trench pulsed like a living organ. The walls themselves seemed to move, inhaling and exhaling in slow, majestic rhythm. The sound wasn't heard through the ears anymore. It was felt in the bones, Warren whispered. "Welcome to the cathedral." The Aeon hovered before a vast opening, a gate larger than any known structure on Earth. It wasn't made for machines. It wasn't even made for flesh. It was as if the sea itself had carved an entrance into its own memory. Naomi felt the hum rise inside her skull. Her pendant glowed brighter. Her vision blurred slightly. The boundary between the submersible's walls and the water beyond began to fade. "Dr. Warren," she murmured, "I'm hearing something." "What do you hear?" "Voices." "No, not voices, vibrations. Like thousands of heartbeats all in unison." "Don't fight it," he said softly. "It's speaking to you in resonance." "It doesn't use language. It uses familiarity. It remembers every rhythm that's ever touched the ocean." She took a slow breath, letting the sound wash through her. And suddenly, the hum became clear. It was music, soft, mournful, infinite, a melody so ancient it felt older than thought. And within that music she felt something else, and a presence, vast, gentle, watching her from within every particle of water. "It's not a being," she whispered. "It's the memory of being." Warren turned toward her, eyes wide. "Say that again." "It doesn't exist in time. It remembers existence. It's the echo of creation itself." He nodded slowly. "That's what Hale said." Before he vanished, the submersible's controls flickered. An automatic override engaged. The Aeon began to move on its own, drawn gently forward into the cathedral's open gate. They passed through a veil of light, a shimmering membrane that rippled like water made of sound. Inside, the pressure stabilized. Readings went silent. For the first time in history, a human vessel entered the living heart of the abyss. The interior was unlike anything Naomi had imagined. It wasn't dark. It wasn't bright. It was alive. The walls were made of pulsating veins of light, each glowing softly in time with her heartbeat. The floor was translucent, and beneath it flowed rivers of luminous liquid that carried what looked like fragments of stars. "It's breathing space," she whispered. Warren stared in awe. "We used to think consciousness evolved within matter. But what if matter evolved within consciousness?" Naomi reached out to the glass again. This time, when her hand met it, the surface shimmered, and the boundary disappeared. Her fingers passed through the glass into the water beyond, and she didn't feel wet. She felt remembered, like something vast had just recognized her touch. "Dr. Wexler," Warren said quietly, "pull your hand back. It's showing me something." Naomi listened to me, but before he could finish, the world around her dissolved into light. She was no longer in the aeon. She was standing, weightless, in a place where ocean and sky were the same. All around her were shapes of liquid light, creatures, memories, stars, blending into one another in slow motion. And from somewhere deep within that brilliance, her voice, and neither male nor female, whispered, "You've come far enough to remember. Do not fear what you are part of." Naomi's pulse quickened. "Who are you?" "I am what you became when you forgot." And in that instant, she saw it all. The first formation of water on a cooling earth, the birth of sound in the vacuum of space. The moment matter learned to echo itself into meaning, the ocean was not a place. It was memory made liquid, and the cathedral was its mind. Back inside, the Aeon alarms blared. Warren struggled with the controls. "She's phasing," he shouted. "Her biofrequency is syncing with the structure." Naomi's body began to glow faintly, her pulse merging with the rhythm of the cathedral. She opened her eyes, and they were no longer reflecting the submersible lights, but the deep blue of the abyss itself. She smiled faintly. "I can hear them, Elias, all of them. The ones who came before. The ones who sank too deep and never returned." The walls around them pulsed once more, stronger, louder, and the hum filled every atom of the sea. Something ancient had awakened, and it remembered humanity's voice. "Breathe again, slowly in and out. Let the sound of the deep pull you back. You are still here in the darkness beneath the waves, inside a vessel, suspended between knowing and unknowing. Every heartbeat hums softly against the walls, and the sea answers back, patient, eternal." Naomi's eyes opened slowly. She wasn't sure if she had been asleep or somewhere else entirely. The cockpit was drenched in a soft cerulean glow. The controls were humming, not with electricity but with breath. Warren stood before her, hands trembling slightly. "You were gone for 6 minutes," he said quietly. "Vitals flatlined. Every reading dropped to 0, and then you came back." Naomi blinked. Her skin shimmered faintly, a thin iridescence that faded as she moved. "It wasn't death," she murmured. "It was translation." Warren frowned. "Translation?" She turned toward the glass viewport. Outside, the cathedral pulsed like a heart of light. The ocean doesn't speak in words. It speaks in remembrance. It showed me how it listens, how everything that ever touches it becomes part of its memory. Warren's voice was quiet, strained. "And what does it remember about us?" Naomi took a long breath. "That we forgot it was alive." Silence fell. The kind of silence that carries meaning, thick, heavy, and aware. The Aeon hovered in that breathless space, its lights dimming to match the soft rhythm of the cathedral's pulse. From the far side of the chamber, something began to move. Not fast, not aggressive, but graceful, deliberate. A structure rose from the abyssal floor. It looked almost like coral at first, then like architecture, then like circuitry woven from living bone. Tiny filaments extended outward, connecting to the walls like veins searching for a heartbeat. Naomi leaned forward, eyes wide in awe. "It's forming something." The structure's shape solidified, a tall column surrounded by rings of light. Each ring rotated slowly, and with every rotation, the hum inside the submersible grew louder. "It's tuning us," Warren whispered. "Matching our resonance." Naomi nodded slowly. "It's not just communication. It's calibration." Then a sudden flash. The column erupted in light, and an image filled the cockpit, a projection not made of photons, but of memory. Naomi saw oceans, endless, timeless, stretching over the primordial earth. Lightning struck. Molecules danced. Life unfolded from silence. "It remembers the beginning," she breathed. The projection shifted. Now she saw machines descending, modern vessels, submarines bearing NASA insignia. Dates flickered in her mind like echoes: 1978, 1983, 1992. They came here, Warren said softly. They all came here. Naomi turned to him. But they never told anyone. He nodded grimly. Because they couldn't. Every mission that reached this depth ended in silence. Transmission logs show acoustic interference, but we know now it wasn't noise. It was language. The ocean was replying. The cathedral pulsed again, and this time, Naomi felt her own heartbeat fall perfectly in sync with it. Every pulse, every breath, every thought, in harmony with the deep. And within that harmony something changed. The hum began to separate into layers, tones within tones, rhythms within rhythms. Each one carried meaning, a feeling rather than a word. It was the closest thing to speech the abyss could form. Remember us. The phrase echoed in her chest, not as sound but as vibration. She gasped softly. It's not warning us, Ilias, it's asking us. Asking what? To remember what we did here. The projection shifted again. Images flickered across the walls. Grainy footage of divers descending in older suits, their lights cutting through black water. Then static, then faces, pale, unblinking, frozen mid-motion. Their helmets reflected the same three-ring symbol now glowing on Naomi's pendant. These were the first, Warren murmured. The Omega Descent, 1973. Naomi's voice trembled. What happened to them? The hum grew louder, deeper, a low vibration that made the metal floor quiver. The projection stabilized. Now she saw their bodies suspended in the water, but not decayed. Not lifeless, they were preserved, perfect, still breathing though no air remained. Their hearts beating once every few minutes, kept alive by the cathedral's rhythm. It's keeping them, she whispered. It doesn't let them die. Warren's eyes widened. For what purpose? Naomi looked at the living statues floating in blue light. To remember them, until we understand why we came. For a long time no one spoke. The hum softened, returning to a steady, calming tone, almost like a lullaby. Naomi closed her eyes, and for a brief moment, she saw her reflection not in glass, but in water, her face dissolving into ripples of light. The voice from before returned, faint, distant, almost loving. Every explorer who descends becomes part of the ocean's dream. You do not discover it. It remembers you back into itself. Her lips parted. It's using us as memory conduits. Every deep-sea explorer, every diver, becomes a living archive. Warren exhaled slowly. That's why NASA stopped. It wasn't pressure. It wasn't danger. It was absorption. The realization sat heavy between them. The deeper they went, the more the ocean remembered them, until there was no them left to return. Naomi leaned back, her voice a whisper. It's not trying to keep us prisoner, Elias. It's trying to complete us. Complete? We began in it. Every cell of our bodies carries salt water. We were never meant to leave the ocean. We were meant to become it again. Warren's breathing grew shallow. Naomi, you're merging with it. You need to disconnect. I can't, not yet. Her hands moved over the console. She wasn't controlling the ship, she was listening to it. And the Aeon in return began to descend again. What are you doing? Warren shouted. It wants to show us the core. The hum rose to a deafening pitch, not violent but overwhelming. Like standing in the center of an infinite choir. The light outside intensified, a sphere of brilliance opening below them. Pulsing in slow, hypnotic rhythm, Naomi whispered, "This is where it began." The vessel crossed the threshold. For a moment there was nothing. No sound, no motion. Only light, endless, comforting, pure. And in that silence, Naomi heard the truth whispered directly into her mind. You were the ocean's experiment in walking memory. When you left, it went silent. Now you have come back to listen. Tears filled her eyes. She looked at Warren, but her gaze had shifted. Distant, calm, otherworldly. Do you hear it now? She asked softly. He shook his head. All I hear is noise. Then listen deeper. In and out. Slowly now. Let the world fade like light dissolving through water. Imagine yourself descending, not falling, not sinking, but drifting. The deeper you go, the quieter the noise of life becomes, until all that remains is the soft pulse of your own heartbeat and the echo of something ancient waiting below. That's where Naomi and Warren now drift, far below the mapped seabed, beyond sonar, beyond science, into the silence that existed before sound itself. The Aeon no longer needed power. Its lights glowed with the same rhythm as the cathedral around it. There was no distinction between machine and organism anymore. Everything pulsed in unison, a single vast resonance. Naomi floated from her seat. The gravity stabilizers had stopped, but she didn't fall. She was suspended, as though the water had remembered her exact weight and decided to hold her gently. The cockpit glass dissolved, not cracked, dissolved, turning into translucent mist that drifted away like smoke. They were no longer inside a vessel. They were inside the ocean's mind. And there before them stood a structure unlike anything built or born. A column of liquid light, rising upward and downward infinitely, as if the universe itself was reflecting in both directions at once. Tiny orbs of light swirled around it, each one pulsing with fragments of sound. Whispers, laughter, storms, the cries of whales, the hum of distant planets. Naomi's voice was barely a whisper. It's recording everything, every vibration ever made, every sound that's ever existed. Warren's face was pale in the glow. You're saying the ocean is a memory field? Not just memory, she murmured. Consciousness. It's the universe's way of keeping itself aware. The light rippled again, and suddenly the space around them filled with images, oceans boiling under volcanic skies. The birth of the moon, frozen seas under alien suns, worlds where water was blue, green, black, each holding the same shimmer, the same resonance. These are not all Earth, Naomi whispered. They're others. Oceans from other worlds, Warren frowned. Then the sea here isn't ours. She shook her head slowly. It's all connected. Water is not of Earth. It came here carried by comets, pieces of other worlds' memories brought home. Every drop of water holds the story of a star. The orbs of light moved closer, swirling around her like gentle spirits. She could hear faint voices inside them, not in words but in feelings. Comfort, sorrow, timelessness. It's showing you, Warren said softly. It's choosing you, Naomi smiled faintly. No, it's remembering itself through me. Her skin shimmered brighter now, the faint blue hue deepening to an ethereal glow. The mark on her wrist pulsed like a small sun. The cathedral's hum changed. It grew warmer, not ominous but intimate. It felt like a hand resting on your shoulder in the dark. Then, without warning, a beam of light descended from above, not from a source, but from directionless infinity. It touched the central column. The resonance multiplied. A low harmonic tone filled the air, the fourth note the forbidden one. The one she had recorded months ago. The one that shouldn't exist. Warren clutched his head, pain crossing his face. It's too strong. But Naomi's eyes were closed. She was perfectly still, a tranquil smile forming as the light enveloped her. Do you feel that, Elias? She whispered. It's remembering the first song. The tone deepened, splitting into harmonies. Not chaotic, but beautifully structured. It was like hearing the architecture of sound itself, and then a voice emerged from within it, not alien, not mechanical, human, familiar. We left the ocean to learn what distance means. We looked to the stars to find reflection. Now the reflection has returned. Warren froze. Who said that? Naomi's lips parted slightly. Us. Us. Every human thought that ever touched the sea. Every word ever whispered near the shore. Every tear, every song, every ship that sank. It absorbed it all. We thought the ocean was silent, but it was always listening. The light around them began to move, slow spirals forming into shapes, continents, currents, patterns of migration and extinction, and above it all a single repeating geometry, 3 rings endlessly rotating. That's the same symbol, Warren murmured. The one on our badges. Naomi nodded faintly. It wasn't our design. It gave it to us long before we knew what it meant. Warren stared at her, realization dawning. NASA didn't invent Division Blue. The ocean did. Exactly, she whispered. They just followed orders they didn't understand. The chamber darkened again. The light condensed into a single sphere before them. It shimmered like liquid mercury, reflecting not their faces, but their thoughts. Every image in their minds appeared on its surface. Naomi's childhood memory of the beach, her father's laughter, Warren's first dive into the Pacific, his fear, his wonder. The ocean was reading them then. Slowly it spoke again. "We remember your creation. You were not the first to breathe air. You were the first to dream of what you came from." Naomi's tears floated in zero gravity, glittering like stars in water. "It knows," she whispered. "It knows why we look up." Warren frowned, voice shaking. "Why do we look up?" She smiled through her tears. "Because we're trying to remember what down felt like." The hum began to fade. The sphere dimmed, leaving only faint ripples of light that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Naomi drifted closer. "It's dying," Warren said. "No," she murmured. "It's sleeping." Sleeping? Every few millennia it retreats, waiting for consciousness to return in another form. Warren hesitated. "Then what's its message?" Naomi placed her hand against the fading sphere. The mark on her wrist flared bright. "That we were never separate. That every time we break the surface, we are breaking from our own reflection." She looked back at him, eyes serene, voice gentle. NASA stopped exploring the ocean not because it was too deep, but because they realized it wasn't something to explore. It was something that explores us, and with that the sphere dissolved, its light folding inward, becoming nothing but a soft shimmer across the infinite black. The hum quieted. The Aeon reappeared around them, still intact, still glowing softly. Only now the water outside wasn't dark anymore. It shimmered faintly with threads of gold, as if the ocean itself had begun to dream again. Naomi's eyes closed. Her breathing slowed. "Elias," she whispered, "do you hear it now?" He listened, and for the first time he did. A sound so subtle, so pure, it felt like a single heartbeat stretched across eternity. "Yes," he said softly. "I hear it." Naomi smiled faintly. "Then the ocean remembers you too." Breathe again, in and out. Feel the weight of the deep ease away, as though the sea itself loosens its hold with a sigh. Each breath rises like a bubble through endless blue, and every bubble carries a memory to the light. Naomi floated upward. She did not swim, the water lifted her. The ocean seemed grateful, almost tender, as if it had finished its story and wanted her to carry it home. Warren's voice drifted beside her, faint in the comms. "Naomi, are we ascending?" "Yes," she whispered. "It's letting us go." The vessel hummed softly, obedient to a current too precise to be random. Outside the viewport, the cathedral receded. No longer an alien monument, but a breathing galaxy of blue fire, its light rippling like the pulse of a sleeping god. Hours passed, or minutes. Time no longer behaved. They crossed through shimmering layers of light, each one carrying faint echoes of the hum, tones of whales, storms, lullabies, even laughter. "It's replaying everything," Warren said. "Every sound that ever touched the sea." Naomi closed her eyes. "It wants us to remember it not as mystery, but as memory." When at last the sensors showed shallow depth, a pale glow spread above them. The surface. For the first time in what felt like ages, sunlight poured through water like molten gold. Naomi raised a hand toward it. The light scattered across her skin, and she realized the mark on her wrist had faded. Not vanished, but become translucent. A whisper rather than a brand. She smiled. "It's done with me." Warren shook his head gently. "Maybe it's in you now." The Aeon broke through the surface with a soundless bloom. No splash, no storm, just stillness. The sea was calm, mirror smooth, and the sky above was streaked with the faint blush of dawn. They drifted in silence. No other ships, no gulls, no wind. It felt less like returning home and more like awakening into another version of reality, one where everything remembered being water. Naomi leaned over the edge. Her reflection stared back, but behind her eyes tiny motes of blue light moved like stars in miniature. "Elias," she said softly, "do you think it ever stopped watching us?" He followed her gaze into the glass flat sea. "No, we just stopped noticing the reflection." Naomi nodded. "Then maybe space was never the opposite of the ocean. Maybe it's the ocean's other face." She looked skyward. The thin haze of atmosphere shimmered faintly, and for an instant she saw patterns in the clouds, 3 faint concentric rings dissolving into air. "It's still there," she whispered. Hours later, Division Blue's recovery craft found them adrift. They offered blankets, questions, and silence. No one mentioned the mark on Naomi's wrist. though every monitor flickered with static when she passed. In the medical bay, as she lay under warm lights, Naomi heard a distant hum through the walls, not from machinery, but from somewhere deeper. It was the same tone. Soft, patient, unending. She smiled to herself. It followed us home. That night she dreamt she was floating again, not in water but in space, weightless, calm, surrounded by glimmers that looked like bubbles of light. Each one contained a world, and every world was wrapped in ocean. A voice whispered, gentle, maternal, infinite. The stars are seas too. You sail them the same way, and one day when you return, the tides between worlds will breathe as one again. Naomi drifted closer to one of the glimmering orbs. Inside, she saw the earth, tiny and blue, turning slowly. From this height, the oceans looked like veins of light carrying memory through a living body. She reached out, and the dream dissolved into soft waves lapping against a shore. Morning. Guam's horizon glowed pale and gold. Naomi walked barefoot along the sand, each step pressing into the same edge where land meets memory. Warren joined her silently, carrying a small case, the recorder she had used months before. It started humming again, he said. Same frequency. Naomi took it, pressed play. 3 notes, then the 4th. No interference, no distortion, but this time after the 4th tone faded, there was something new, a quiet rhythm beneath it, like a heartbeat recorded from a mile away. That's us, Naomi said softly. The ocean kept us. She turned toward the sea. For a brief second, the horizon shimmered, and she thought she saw a colossal shadow far beneath the surface, moving slowly, gracefully, like a continent exhaling. She didn't feel fear, only belonging. It's still dreaming, she whispered. The sky deepened. Sunlight stretched across the waves like silk. Somewhere beyond vision, a pulse answered hers. Slow, immense, endless. Naomi closed her eyes. Sleep well, she murmured. We'll listen next time. The wind carried her words away down into the deep where they would echo, joining every whisper, every heartbeat, every explorer who ever called the sea home. And for a fleeting instant, the entire ocean shimmered as if smiling. Drift deeper into stillness. Let your breath become the tide of in and out, in and out. The sea has released you now, but its rhythm still lives in the space between heartbeats. Close your eyes and feel how silence hums when you listen long enough. That's the ocean still speaking, not through sound but through memory. Weeks passed. Naomi returned to Houston for the final debrief. The halls of the NASA facility felt smaller now, like veins too narrow to hold what she had brought back. Every screen flickered faintly when she walked past. Every sensor picked up a pulse that technicians couldn't locate. Maybe it's residual magnetism, someone suggested. Maybe interference, but Naomi knew. The ocean's language was not interference, it was persistence. She was called into a private room. Inside waited a man she'd never seen before. No name tag, no insignia, just a dark suit and eyes that didn't blink often. Dr. Reed, he said quietly, we've reviewed your data, and? You didn't encounter anything living, correct? She hesitated. That depends on what you mean by living, he paused. We're closing Division Blue. Closing? Effective immediately. All materials archived under cosmic study. Your work continues. In another department, Naomi frowned. Cosmic? But this was marine exploration. Perhaps not anymore. He slid a small envelope across the table. Inside was a clearance badge, the NASA crest replaced with a simple symbol, 3 faint concentric rings. That night, she sat alone on her balcony, the city spread below like scattered circuitry. She pressed play on the recorder again. The hum filled the air, low and endless, but something new emerged between the tones, a subtle undertone, almost like radio static, shaping itself into faint syllables. Above and below. One breath. Naomi froze. She rewound, played again. The same whisper, as if the ocean itself was speaking through the static. Above and below, one breath. She looked up. The sky shimmered faintly. Not clouds this time, but faint circular ripples of light. They expanded and vanished, as though the heavens had learned to imitate the sea. Months later, NASA quietly unveiled a new department, the Celestial Acoustic Initiative. Officially, it was about mapping low-frequency cosmic resonance. Unofficially, it was Division Blue reborn. The ocean's reflection turned toward the stars. Naomi was among the few transferred. She didn't speak of what she'd seen, but each night she calibrated instruments that listened not for light but for sound, frequencies older than galaxies, patterns that mirrored the hum from the deep. And every so often, the monitors displayed something uncanny, waveforms identical to those recorded underwater, cosmic echoes that matched the ocean's forgotten voice. "It's calling," Warren said once during a late shift. "But from where?" Naomi looked out at the stars. Maybe not from anywhere. Maybe it's all the same body, breathing through different lungs. Weeks turned into years. The hum never stopped. In laboratories, it became background noise, a subtle lullaby for those who stayed late enough to listen. Researchers reported strange dreams, drifting through luminous tides, standing on shores that curved into infinity, hearing voices not in words but in gentle, rolling currents of thought. Naomi never told them these weren't dreams. They were invitations. One evening she stayed behind after everyone left. The control room was quiet, lit only by the pulse of blue monitors. She adjusted one frequency, slightly lower than usual, and suddenly the speakers released a sound like the sea inhaling. Then, from the static, a faint shimmer of voices began to rise. "We rise, we sink. We remember." Naomi felt tears slip down her face. "You never left," she whispered. "So I just changed direction." Outside, lightning flared silently, but there was no storm. Only a vast luminescence over the gulf, as if the ocean were shining back at the stars. A few months later, NASA released a quiet internal memo: oceanic frequencies detected in cosmic microwave background. No press release. No explanation, but every scientist who read it knew what it meant. The sound of the deep had been heard again in space. Naomi stood once more on a shore years later. Her hair had streaks of silver now, and the tide hummed softly against her ankles. She closed her eyes. The world was quiet, but beneath that quiet was a familiar rhythm, a cosmic pulse, the sea's gentle exhale traveling through everything. She remembered the cathedral, the luminous shapes beneath the abyss, the hum that once terrified her and now comforted her. And she realized something profound. "The reason we stopped exploring," she said softly, "wasn't fear. It was respect. Because NASA hadn't stopped searching. They had simply changed instruments. The telescopes became hydrophones for the sky. The probes became divers through cosmic tide. The astronauts, sailors of another sea. The mission was never abandoned. It had only gone silent. Silent enough for humanity to listen again. As twilight fell, Naomi whispered a final message to the waves. "Thank you for letting us breathe your memory." And somewhere deep beneath and high above, the same hum answered her, not as echo, but as acknowledgement. The sea. The stars. The same infinite breath. Close your eyes. Feel the rhythm in your chest. The slow tide of heartbeat and breath. You are floating again, held between sky and sea, above and below one endless body of calm. The story doesn't end. It simply drifts, the way all waves return quietly to where they began. Sleep now. The ocean remembers you. The stars are listening. Breathe, slowly, deeply. Let the world around you fade into the softness of waves. The air is cool and salted. The sand beneath you is warm. The ocean murmurs like an ancient lullaby you've always known, even before you were born. You are no longer standing on the shore. You are the shore. Each inhale is the tide coming in. Each exhale, the tide receding. The story has ended, but the rhythm continues. And somewhere far beyond thought, the hum persists, quiet, patient, alive. In the silence that follows discovery, there is peace. For all truths eventually become music, and all music eventually becomes silence. NASA never declared it, but every researcher knew. The deeper they listened, the more the boundary blurred between sea and cosmos, between thought and tide, between knowing and dreaming. Perhaps that is what the ocean wanted to teach, that not everything hidden seeks to be found. Some mysteries wish only to be heard. Now, imagine you are floating, weightless, timeless, drifting in a sea made not of water, but of light. Tiny motes swirl around you like plankton. each one carrying the whisper of a star. You reach out. Your fingers pass through constellations. They ripple like reflections on the surface of a still pond. The Milky Way above you becomes a soft current below. And suddenly, there is no above or below, no sea or sky, no beginning or end. Only one vast luminous ocean, the universe itself breathing. You hear Naomi's voice again, faint as a dream. "When the deep calls," she says, "it doesn't ask you to answer, only to listen." Her words drift through you, blending with the hum. You realize it's not coming from outside anymore. The sound is inside you, woven through heartbeat and thought, resonating with a frequency older than language. The same sound that began in the first cell dividing in the first ocean, the same hum carried by every atom that has ever lived, and the same vibration the stars give off when they burn. It was never a secret. It was recognition. You see a vision, a blue sphere suspended in a void, turning slowly, wrapped in silver clouds. Earth, the only planet known to hold both sea and sky. Its sound is not silence, it's song, a long, low chord of existence. The ocean is its voice. NASA didn't stop exploring. They just realized they were already inside what they sought. They were floating, always, in an ocean vast enough to cradle galaxies. Now, feel your breath again, in, out, slow, gentle, endless. Your body begins to dissolve into the rhythm, not gone but expanded, merged with the same current that moves tides and stars alike. The hum returns, barely audible, as if whispering just to you. Sleep now. You are part of the current. You are remembered. And as you drift deeper into rest, imagine yourself descending one last time, not into darkness, but into warmth, into the soft, endless quiet beneath thought, the place where even the ocean sleeps. Time fades, names dissolve. The sea stretches forever, lit by glimmers that might be fish or memories or dreams. Naomi's voice echoes faintly, but now it sounds like your own. "We thought we were exploring the sea," she says, "but it was the sea exploring us." You smile in the half-light, weightless, anchored only by calm. The hum rises again, filling every gap in silence until silence itself becomes music. You are safe, you are home, and you are infinite. The waves continue to breathe, each crest a heartbeat, each ripple a thought fading gently into the next. You drift, peacefully, completely, until the last trace of wakefulness is carried away by the tide. Sleep now. You are the ocean dreaming of itself. The stars are your reflection, and the universe, it hums softly because you are listening.